Hello, this is your teacher, Paul, on Learn American English Online on YouTube. This is another live event. And once again, I'm experimenting to see what works and what doesn't work when I do the live uh, instruction. And I'm going to post something in the chat just to make sure it works. It's Tuesday, October 14th in the afternoon. Here it is 3:17 p.m. in the afternoon. The topic for today is achieving fluency in English. And I'll speak at some length about the things that I think you should do in order to, reach the goals that you have in communicating in English. There are many of you who want to be able to speak and communicate without thinking about it too much, I suppose, so that it comes naturally. But of course, you're always going to have to be engaged uh, thoughtfully and try to speak as well as you can, observing rules of grammar, pronunciation, the sentence structure, idioms, phrasal verbs, those kinds of things when you speak. And so, if English is your second language, it's not going to be easy. I think it'll be a long journey before you get there. Anyone who tells you that it's easy to speak English is not telling you the truth. There are a number of things that I think you should do, things that you should practice in order to get there, which you can do someday, but it's going to take time. I often tell my students that the most important thing that you can do is listen. That's number one. That's a fairly easy thing to do. It does require some thought. You have to think about what it is that you're what you hear, and but listening is an active skill. So whatever you're listening to, whether it's on the radio or if it's television, if it's your teacher, or if you're listening to two people talking in the street, you still really have to pay attention to what those people are saying. And the more you can immerse yourself in listening to English, I think the easier it is for your ears to become accustomed to the language. If you listen to it all day, I guarantee you'll pick up some English. But I think you have to listen to it every day. It can't just be for 15 minutes, 20 minutes here and there, and then you go back to your first language. You really have to listen for a sustained period of time. And so that's the first thing. Then I think the second skill that you should develop is reading. Reading is important, even if you don't read well, um, and you're not sure what all the words are when you read them. It's something that you should be doing regularly, especially for vocabulary development. Initially, beginning level students have trouble with reading because the words and the spelling are so different from their first language. But with practice over time, you'll get it. And this is important too. I think you should read out loud. So instead of reading to yourself, instead of reading silently, I think you should read out loud and maybe to other people. But if you're at home and you don't feel very comfortable reading out loud, find a place where you can be by yourself and read anything. It could be, the newspaper, magazine, children's books are good if you're fairly new to reading. I think children's books are great to begin with, and do that on a regular basis. And I think accumulating books that you like to read in English is a really good idea, so that you're constantly, so that you're always reading kind of the same thing. Sorry, I gotta okay. My phone. I never know when it's gonna be really important, and it never is. So, get rid of that. Just checking the chat here as I speak. Um, I'm from Minnesota. I live in Minneapolis, but I was, um, raised in Chicago, so my accent is probably somewhere between Chicago accent and one that is of Minnesota, but it's a Midwestern accent, the upper Midwest. So where I live is not too far from Canada. It's about, I'd say, 7 hours from Canada, if that helps. But Minneapolis is a major city. You probably have heard about it. I'm sure you have. Okay, so I talked about listening and reading. The third thing you should try to do as much as possible is speak in English. And so following the reading skill where you're speaking out loud, but you're reading words that are in front of you. When you're when you feel comfortable talking to another person, I think you really should speak. And that can involve reciting something that another person says. So you hear what somebody says, and then you say the same thing. I think there are probably a lot of videos on YouTube where the teacher or the person in the video says something, and then perhaps you repeat it. I make pronunciation videos that kind of fit that description. Um, and I've posted some of those on my website and on my channel. If you go to englishfortheplanet.com, that's my website, and that's where you can find a lot of videos and other materials for learning English, and it's all free. I'm still developing the website. It's very new, but I'll just put it in the chat so it's easier to find. Englishfortheplanet.com. And so in any videos that you find there for pronunciation or for grammar and usage, when you hear me say something, you can repeat it. You can stop the video, and whatever you've heard, you whatever you've heard me say, you say it. And of course, with a video, you can go back and listen to something again and again and repeat it again and again until you find that what you're saying matches what I said. Of course, it's helpful to have conversations, and that's where people have the most difficulty because they feel too nervous and are afraid to speak. But somehow you're going to have to lose that fear and just let the words come out. If consider the way that a child learns a language, it comes naturally. The child just speaks, and the the child doesn't care about making mistakes or saying something that's an error or mispronouncing a word or using the incorrect grammar. They have no awareness of grammar. They simply repeat or mimic the things that they hear, and that can be effective, I think. But you have to just do it. And of course, I know people are hesitant to do that, but you have to just speak and try and just do your best. I think a lot of people appreciate when someone gives his or her best effort to speak in a particular language. It does help if you live in the country where you're speaking that country's language. So I live in the United States, and if you live here also, then you have a lot of opportunities to speak. But then many people who come to this channel don't live in the United States, and they may lack people with whom they can practice English. And yeah, that could be a problem. So I think um, if you say the things that you are thinking, say those things out loud in English, whatever you're doing. That is a way of practicing your speaking skills. If you pretend someone asks you a question at the grocery store, for example, how would you respond to that question by speaking in English? What exactly would you say? Now, upon saying something, you might not be aware of if you said something that was correct or incorrect. But the fact that you just tried and you activated the vocal cords, um, you develop a muscle memory when you speak. That's why it's so important to speak because, the tongue and the teeth and the way that your mouth moves, all those things go together as well as your vocal cords. There's a lot of moving parts, and practicing that is important. But if you just want to practice sounds, speaking, pronouncing different sounds, that's okay too. I just made a video a couple of days ago on the H sound, and it's not a difficult sound, but you can practice making, or forming individual words, and that counts. I think that's a good way of practicing. But you have to do something, whether it's repeating individual words or trying to speak whole sentences or speaking at length in a conversation, which is the best thing to do. You have to do it. Sorry, I have to get some water. Okay, and then the fourth thing that you should do in order to try to achieve fluency, ultimately, it takes a while, is write. You really have to write. And the the great thing about writing is you have time to think about what you want to write. It's different from speaking because when you speak, it has to come out immediately in response to a question or in response to something that you see. And writing gives you a little bit more time. Um, if you if you follow a course, a structured course, then you'll get some good ideas about how you can go about that. I think what's really important is if you keep a notebook for writing. I've mentioned this in other videos. If you maintain a notebook, and it could look like this. This is a notebook that I use in assembling ideas for my videos. So you can see videos 2025. But a notebook, maybe you put up here English or practicing English, whatever. But you just keep one notebook and you write in it all the time. And I think it's important to date the notebook. So you put the dates in there. Today is October 14th, and you write, you know, October 14th, and then write whatever it is that you're doing. That it can include, by the way, any YouTube videos that you see. I do this with the guitar videos that I watch because I practice guitar, and I've practiced and played guitar for a very long time, and not great. I'm not great at it, but I enjoy it. I think that's the important thing is I enjoy playing, and I keep a notebook that lists the videos that I've seen on YouTube and the skills that I've been able to develop and master. I I think that's a good thing to write down because then you can look at that later and get a sense of your accomplishments. How far have you gone? So that's a I think that's a good thing to do. Um, I also study German on YouTube, and I'll often write the things that I hear after I watch the video because that helps me to remember. I think the important thing about writing is, and I tell this to my students, uh, the students that I work with during the day, especially, these are adult um, students, that writing is a motor skill. And when you write, there's a connection to the brain. And when you write, you reinforce the things that you've learned. Anything that's captured here or that is up here can go here and onto paper. And just by doing that, that will help you to develop the memory of the thing that you've learned. And that's something that you can look back on and remember when you learned it. And and that helps you to recall the things that you've learned. You know, when you recall information, you're bringing it back from your brain, wherever it's stored, and you're bringing it forth, and then you're using it. And that helps immensely. If it's up here and you don't use it, you don't have a reason for using it, it'll stay there until whatever happens with information. I think a lot of it stays there, but perhaps some of it evaporates, it disappears. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not a brain expert, but I do know that writing helps you to recall the information that you've acquired over time. So that's something that you should be doing. Writing. You should be doing that all the time. It also is a reflection, I think, when you write, of how serious you are about learning English or how serious you are in developing any skill. So when I was younger, much younger, I would write constantly because I was interested in becoming a writer. And so I wrote, and I have a lot of notebooks with the ideas that I came up with for, stories, or I just wrote about my life, the things that were happening in my life. And that helped me develop my writing skills and my English skills. So, as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old young man, my English was still developing. And writing helped in that effort tremendously because I could see what I wrote, think about it, look at the grammar, practice different things with pronunciation, practice different forms of vocabulary. I surprise myself when I look back at that writing to realize how much I knew or what I did not know, especially when it comes to grammar, because it does take a long time to become proficient in grammar. I'm just going to look at the comments. It's hard to talk and read the comments at the same time, but when I look over here, I am looking at the comments. But um, I know reading comments is not the most exciting thing to watch on a YouTube video. Um, Eunice has recommended my channel. Thank you. I appreciate that. Uh, and um, let's see. Uh, it's natural for adults to overthink. I think that's true. Just try not to think about try not to think about it too much, but you're going to, no matter what. You're an adult, and somehow you kind of have to let go and just let it come out. I've had some students who have had English courses for years and years and have never really practiced speaking during the times that they've taken these courses, whether it's in a classroom or online. I think especially of like some of the students I've had from Japan, they're very proficient in grammar and usage, but when it comes to speaking, they're very reluctant to speak. I think maybe that's part of the culture, um, showing a personal side of oneself and not wanting to expose too much of your weakness, maybe if that or whatever you perceive of as a weakness, which it shouldn't be. I think it's a strength actually when you have the courage to speak. I think that takes a lot of it takes a lot of effort and energy, but that's why it's so important. And it is uncomfortable, when when you speak English and make mistakes, that's very uncomfortable. But that discomfort is what stays with you, and that's what helps to build the skills that you are developing is making mistakes. You don't learn too much when you're comfortable. You learn more when you're put into an uncomfortable situation. So be uncomfortable when you speak English. Just know that you're getting into it, and no matter what happens, you're just going to go through it and let it happen. The students I work with who do well in speaking are the ones who rely less on their written English and more on their spoken English, and they make the best of what they have in order to speak. So I think just let it happen. The grammar does help, of course. I'm going to talk about grammar here in just a minute, but just to review, um, the input skills, listening and reading. That's input. That's going in. And when you're listening, you're just using your ears, and when you're reading, of course, your eyes. But there's very little consequence in terms of exposing yourself to other people and what you can or cannot do, because nobody knows if you comprehend when you read or when you listen. So those are the input skills, and I think those are extremely important. Listening is number one. You should be doing that all the time. And then the output skills, the production skills, that's the writing and the speaking that's going out. And that's the tricky part, because when you speak, people hear you, and you have to deal with the consequences of that. You can't correct something. I mean, you can correct something that you've said, but once it's out of your mouth, it's there. But it doesn't stay in the air. It disappears. No, those words that you spoke don't hang around for very long. They're gone. When you write, however, whatever you've written, that sticks around. That's there for anyone to see, but that's okay too, especially if you have a teacher who can look at your writing and then make the corrections. And then once you have the corrections, then you can look at what you did, what kind of mistake you made, and try not to make that mistake again. So writing is good. I think if you just, write about your daily life, write about the things that you're thinking, it could be absolutely anything. I think, if you write about the most mundane, boring activities that you do during the day, that's fine. What did you do in the morning? What did you do in the afternoon? What are you doing right now? And just commit that to paper. I think that's the important thing. And then you can look back on it later and see if it's any good. If you look back on it after 2 or 3 months, perhaps, or even a year, you should recognize your improvement, and that will add to your confidence if you can see that you're improving. I think that's another huge benefit in writing because you've got it on paper, you dated it, you put a date on there, and when you look at it later, you see what kind of progress you've made after 3 months, 6 months, a year. So, so writing is really important. Um, and and then there comes, English grammar, English usage. Those are the exercises that can require all four of those skills: speaking, listening, writing, reading, and of course that's something that you should be committing to paper. If you do any sort of grammar exercises and you don't write those things down, you're not likely to remember much of it unless you've got a really good memory. So I think that's something else that you can do in your notebook. If you notice um, on my website, englishfortheplanet.com, I recommend that people write, and there's a little symbol that I've used that shows a person holding the pen. That means that you should write. I did that in the previous website, Learn American English Online, which I no longer control. So people who have been informing me of mistakes on that website, I can't change that because I don't own the website. I got rid of it because I couldn't uh, maintain the website. The software changed, and now I'm using something that's quite different. I'm using WordPress, which I like a lot, and it's fun to start over again, even though that website had 4,000 pages. I'm up to about 250 pages, I think, now on the new website, but it's still very new. I do encourage people to go to it because that motivates me to work on it. I'm working on it every day, but anything that you see there, you can work on. And of course, there are the professionally written books that contain grammar exercises, and you can benefit from just about any book. I think I get a lot of questions about recommendations. What do I recommend for a book? And there are a lot of really good books out there. With my students, I use a book that's written by Betty Azar, English Fundamentals, I think is the title of it. And uh, she and another author um, have written a series of English grammar books, which I like to use with my students. I think they're very user friendly and they're fairly well organized. However, I have my own ideas about how English grammar and usage should be taught. So one of my goals is to write and publish my own book or series of books and for English language learners. I will do that. That's a goal that I really would like to achieve in the future. But in the meantime, I have the website, and I can use that for experimentation for things that I do later. Um, so yeah, English grammar, and if you never really learned it, you should start at the beginning and just slowly work your way through. Um, all the exercises in any, decent grammar book. I think knowing initially how the verb be works is extremely important. Even intermediate and advanced learners still struggle with be and do. That's an important verb as well because it's a helping verb and a main verb. So yeah, so English grammar really important. Um, just looking at the comments. Uh, Abdiaziz, um, if you want to learn fast, I'm not sure. So if you want to learn fast, English grammar is a must. You must learn English grammar. Whether you learn English fast or not, you should be aware of it. You should, like you should know all 12 verb tenses. Do you know what they are? You really should know all of them. What are the 8 parts of speech? Do you know all of those? That's something that's important when the teacher is talking about individual words in a sentence. If you can't recognize the verbs or adjectives or nouns, adverbs, etc., then you're going to struggle a little bit. You may not have to know all of those things. People who speak English as a first language probably can't tell you the difference among the different words in a sentence, and they don't have to because it's their first language. But because you're a student, and I think most of you out there are adults, you can learn the English grammar and you can be very good at it. That's something that you can do, but it takes time. How long does it take? It really depends what kind of brain you have. Um, I have to work at everything that I do. Nothing comes easily to me. So I don't know. I think the average person probably is going to struggle with English grammar for I think somewhere between maybe 3 to 5 years and longer. Why not just continue studying beyond that? But it doesn't happen fast. It just kills me when I hear or see videos. And I don't really watch any videos, English language videos. I never have, and I still don't. I guess because this is what I do all day, and I kind of have an awareness of what people have to say just because I've seen the thumbs that are on YouTube. That's just that cover for the video, that first thing you see before you click. And on a lot of those videos, you know, they claim that learning English is easy or easy English or effortless English. That just kills me. It's not effortless. You really have to work. I think what I want to do is make a video, and on the thumb, I'll simply say, English is really hard. It's going to take you a long time to learn it. And then no one will click on that video because everybody wants to learn English the easy way, the fast way. But there's no such thing. You can't learn it fast and easy. Who does that? Unless you're a genius. And I'm sure there are some geniuses among you who can learn everything fast. And congratulations. But most people can't. That's like 98% of us can't learn things quickly. Um, okay, and then there's the use of AI, which I've talked about recently, and I think you have to be very careful with AI. There are some good applications for it. I know some of my students use it for various things. If you rely on it, then you'll come up against some problems. Uh, One thing is the accuracy is in doubt. I've looked at some of the results from AI, and sometimes it's not accurate. Um, and I know of some of my students who are using AI chat buddies, which is interesting. I can't compete with that. Um, you talk to the AI chat buddy and it talks back to you. There's there's probably something that comes from that. It's not a person though, but if you don't have a person to speak with and that's all you have, I suppose you can experiment with it, see how that works. But you're still going to have to do other things. The things I mentioned. That's the listening, the reading, the writing, and speaking. You still have to do that. Speaking is something that you can do with a chat AI bot or buddy, and listening. Of course, you listen, you respond. Um, I don't know. I don't know where it's going to take us. As a teacher, I wonder how how much longer I'll have a job um, because of AI. But I think there's always going to be a need for people. I, increasingly becoming concerned about the intrusion of technology in our lives. If you consider what happened with social media and how that's wrecked lives already, and created distance um, between people, or created among some people a sense of social isolation, which is ironic because it's social media. But if you ever seen anybody these days walking around with their cell phone anywhere on the street or in a hallway and not making eye contact, not interacting with other people, not socializing, but looking down at the phone, I don't feel very comfortable with that. You're missing the opportunities to engage people, real people, by making eye contact and speaking directly to other people. That's how you meet people in life. You make eye contact and say hello. If you have your phone in front of you and you're walking down the street and you're not making eye contact, you lost an opportunity to meet somebody and possibly communicate with that person. So there's a lot of harm from social media, uh, and that includes the time that people spend on social media. That's time wasted and time not spent in seriously studying the language. So that's another thing to consider because there is a lot of junk on TV, and human beings have a tendency to gravitate to the easy entertainment, you know, the dancing videos, um, the cat videos, cooking videos. I have to say, I enjoy looking at the cooking videos because I like to cook and eat. But there's a lot of distraction on social media, and you could be wasting your time. Um, Another thing you can do is, depending on where you live, if you really want to achieve fluency in English, is get a job that requires English. And it's possible you could find something like that in the country where you live. If there's any opportunity where you find people who are from United States or England or Australia, Ireland, India, and every day, then you'll have the opportunity to talk to somebody in English, and you can do that online too. Where you have a job, you're working online nowadays. Um, I People who work in telemarketing or work for different companies and they respond to questions on the phone. They're in India. They're not in the United States, but they're talking to people in the United States. That's a great opportunity to practice English and get paid for it. So you're at your job and you're making money and you're speaking English. It could be somewhat repetitive depending on the nature of the job. But I think even working as a cashier and when you're handling money and you're speaking English, I think that can be very helpful. If you live in the United States, I always recommend to my students that they find a job where English is required and they're speaking it every day, and take the job that gives you that opportunity over the job that pays you more money. Because I also have students who work in jobs that are, in a factory, or they're doing assembly, or they're working with other people who speak the same language they do. Might be in a kitchen and everyone is speaking English. I'm sorry, everyone is speaking Spanish, or it's doing assembly work, putting things together, and everyone is speaking Vietnamese. If you hear that all day and you're speaking your first language all day to other people who speak your first language, and you're living in the United States, then you're really missing the opportunity to develop your skills in English. So I think getting a job that requires English and requires you to speak it is a good thing to do. Um, and then, however you can achieve it, try to think in English in any activity you're doing. It doesn't matter what it is. You're in your home, and you have to go get a glass of water, and that's what you say to yourself, or say it out loud. I have to go get a glass of water. I'm thirsty. Just do that, and do that all day. If you don't have the opportunity to speak English to other people, I think especially if you live in a country where there's really absolutely no opportunity to meet or talk to anybody who speaks English, then you're going to have to do something like that, and just create, using your imagination, create situations for yourself that require the use of English. Um, Looking at the chat, I know I'm sorry, I'm neglecting it, but once I get on a train of thought, I kind of like to stay on it. Uh, Thunder makes a comment about doom scrolling being a problem. That's true. It, I think a lot of people are guilty of it. I do it sometimes too. Um, and a lot of people are worried about what's happening in the world, and they're constantly consuming the news, reading the news online, or wherever they get the news. I think you want to make sure you get your news from a reputable source, not Facebook or Instagram or elsewhere, but a good news source. But I think we're all concerned about the way things are going. Certainly here in the United States, we're extremely concerned about the way things are going. And so I wake up in the morning and I thank God we're still here, because I don't trust the people who are in charge. And so I think we're all guilty of doom scrolling, but don't let that dominate your life. I think you got to look at the bright side of everything, and follow your passion. I think in this case, for many of you, it's English. That's a good outlet for any frustration you may be feeling about the way things are going in the world. Um, let's see. So I've been talking for, wow, 45 minutes. Um, I tried doing this for about like 15 minutes at a time in the most recent videos I put out. And I made one last week that showed you my classroom where I teach during the day. That was just a 5-minute one. But um, I would like to try to figure this out, because it's fun. I enjoy doing it. One thing I'm sure you don't know, because you don't know me, but I went to college originally to get into radio and television. I wanted to get into television and radio production. and uh, and I did that for a little while after college, but it didn't find it to be very satisfactory because so many people are involved in the production of television or radio shows. I didn't feel that I was getting any sort of um, any of my ideas across, and everything I wanted to do was diluted by what other people were suggesting we do. So it's like when you have a group of 10 people, uh, the end result of anything that 10 people make is always the result of 10 people, not one person, but 10, and the results are not always good. So that's why I took the detour into education, because as a classroom teacher, I can make all the decisions, and it's just easier to manage everything when you're in that kind of a position. Um, Costa is asking if I'm speaking in a I think what real tempo, right, and rhythm, and yes, I am. Uh, Perhaps I'm speaking a little bit more slowly than I would normally, but this is probably at the same pace that I use when I teach. But it is different because I don't have a group of people. I don't have 30 people looking at me. Instead, I have, looks like right now, 38, 40 people from wherever around the world, wherever you are. I know it's many different places outside the United States. But really, I'm in a room by myself, and it feels like I'm kind of like I'm talking to myself, but I can see the chat. Having the chat, having the response makes a difference. It helps me because then I feel like people are listening and benefiting in some way. Um, if nobody showed up, I couldn't do this. If nobody came, I couldn't do this at all. It would be really hard. So thanks for showing up. Thanks for the encouragement. I appreciate that. I enjoy doing what I do, and I'll continue to do it for as long as I can, as long as it makes a difference. I was drawn to teaching because of the need, and and that's why I'm a teacher, because there was a need at the time that I became a teacher for people to join the profession, and so I did. Okay, so yeah, I gotta stop, and I'll come back on. It is Tuesday. I'll come back on. I'm not sure when. I'm going to Chicago this weekend. There's a big event that's happening there, and I'm going to be there for it. So I'll be there this weekend, and and but I'll try to get on here one more time before I leave on my trip. Have a good day, everybody, and I'll see you soon. Go to my website when you can, englishfortheplanet.com. Again, I'll put this in here, englishfortheplanet.com. A little self promotion here. Okay, have a good day. Thanks for showing up.